First of all, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to get interviewed by us. We're really excited for the chance to be able to speak with you about your experiences in history and taking part in like the great event in history that is World War II. Where and when were you born, Miss Diddy?
I was born in a village in Scotland in 1925.
And can you describe your childhood for us? What was it like?
My mother died when I was 5, my sister was 6, my brother was 7, so it wasn't a very happy childhood. We didn't have any mother, and we lived in the country, and my father looked after us and with a maid. It wasn't an easy childhood. But the war started when I was only 14. I couldn't wait to join. And the worst experience I remember, there was a lady on the street. She was a cleaning lady, very old-fashioned one, where she had snuff. She had a shawl on, and I said, "Oh, this was the day after war started. Oh, I hope it'll last a long time till I grow up." And she slapped me in the face so hard. I was so shocked. She just took her arm and she slapped me so hard. I didn't realize, I was young and innocent, didn't realize how many people had to die before I grew up. You know, I was so eager to help.
When did you enlist into the military? Was it the Scottish military?
When I was 17, I joined up, and I was 18 before they called me in July the 12th, 1943. July the 12th, 1943, yes. It was, my boyfriend at the time was in the Navy, and I really wanted to be a naval cadet woman, and he said, "No way." So I joined what they had. There was called the Land Army. But there was the Land Army. There was a branch of, I hate to use the pun, it was called the Timber Corps. It's in the north, very north of Scotland, and where it's really, really cold in the winter time. We were out every day, all day long, no matter what the weather was like, in the mountains, cutting trees. I actually started cutting trees. Then we had a sawmill. Everything we did was manual because we didn't have any power. So we had big 6-foot crosscut saws and a woman in each end, a girl in each end. And then we'd have to take all the branches off. And then after a couple of years, they had big Clydesdale horses. These are huge animals that pull the trees out of the woods. And they needed a girl badly, and I volunteered for that job. It wasn't easy. I would have to get about 3 trees, get the chains around them, put them onto the horse and run down that mountain because the horse was going like mad and I had to keep up to the sawmill. And then I'd load a truck that was, after the girls cut them to 8 foot, 10 foot, whatever length they wanted, and I would load the truck and take it to the railway station where it was reloaded again onto the railway car. Actually, I was stationed, my last station was opposite Balmoral Castle in Scotland, and that's where the King and Queen and family have to spend 6 weeks in Scotland. They must spend 6 weeks every year in Scotland. So it was really beautiful. Where we always were, it was so scenic, it was very mountainous region in Scotland. It's very beautiful. I was in the choir for the King, Queen and Princess Margaret and Princess Elizabeth. So I'll show you a picture in the hall I've got with them. I did receive a citation from the Queen Mother after the war. But I really enjoyed being there, but it was really hazardous, to say the least. It was hard, hazardous work. But somehow you felt you were doing good because the men, all the forestry men were gone. And rather than I didn't take up arms, I didn't want to take up arms. I think there's no place for women fighting in the war. I don't agree with that at all. There's lots of jobs that women can do without taking an arms and killing people. That's the enemy. But I spent 3 years in that area, all around that area in the north of Scotland. But that was my last posting. We were in huts. There would be about 12 of us, and we had a wooden stove, a stove to cut wood. And we cut the wood and we would heat this big hut. Then we have to go down to another hut to get our meals. That was it. I spent my weekend leaves always in Aberdeen, which is a very beautiful North Sea city. the buildings there were granite and they sparkled in the sun. But now they've got the oil there, I don't know how it's going to be.
What prompted you to join the military? Do you recall?
Oh, I
any
had
specific
to. I
events?
just had to help.
Uh-huh.
You know, Britain was that tight little island. It's so very
Oh, yeah,
small.
yeah.
And when you have to leave it to realise how small the place is. And I just had to help. I just right away I wanted to grow up and be in there and help out as much as I could.
Oh, what did the people around you think about that?
Well, actually my sister and I lived alone. We
Oh.
had no mother, as I said before. And at 16 you're considered an adult in Scotland. So at 17 I joined up. We had to have permission from my father to be able to join up. So my sister and I were pretty well on our own. She was 16 and 17, so I didn't have to be concerned about that.
And you had a brother as well, right?
Yes, my brother was in the Merchant Navy. My sister was in the Land Army. She actually married a Canadian, that's why I've come to Canada. She married a Canadian and war bride. Came in April the 13th, 1951.
Oh.
So, and I still have my accent, I don't intend to lose it, as long as I'm
It's
speaking
very
English.
unique. Yeah.
But what I really, the thing that intrigued me from the plane, seeing Canada and the East Coast, it seemed to me the houses were thrown out of plane and scattered all over, and they were all pretty pastel colours. And I thought, well, after the greenness of Glasgow, a big city, a very old city, at that time the third largest in the world, there's lots of smoke, and from the fuel was smoke, was coal.
They put coal.
And come here and see all this beautiful colour, it was just wow. And the lights, we were always in darkness. Everything was a blackout. You had to put blackout curtains on your window, no chinks of light. There was always a every warning going around, and if you had a chink of light, they would come and tell you off. You couldn't, so everything was blacked out in your windows, always.
Oh, so this was in Scotland?
This in Scotland.
Oh.
This is Great Britain.
During the war, did you ever experience a German bombing over the country?
Yes. Where I lived in Glasgow at 16, 17, until I joined up 18, we had the big Highland Light Infantry barracks called the HLI barracks. A few blocks from us, we had the big naval docks on this side and barracks on this side, and whole streets of people get wiped out.
Oh.
And my sister and I, my father said, I don't care where you are, you've got to come home. Now we'd always lived in the house in the country, so there we were in the apartment, the top corner of the apartment. And the worst place in the world to be where the bombs were falling, the very worst. I want to see you girls home, I want to know where you are. We'd only be down the street of the church. We had the church youth group, and we'd down there, I don't care where you are, I said, I want you home. But we had really petrifying times, yes. And I prayed, and probably when the 17th birthday, I said, dear God, you bombed the last 2 nights, tomorrow's my birthday, could you please let me sleep? That was my prayer for getting my 17th birthday. I was so tired. I was so tired, you didn't get sleepy. But these things would go off, and the Germans really bombed it. I think London and Coventry and us were the worst three. We were a big city with great big docks. In fact, most of the ships in the world were built there at that time. My father was a shipbuilder foreman. And that was another great huge industry, like the Queen Mary and all these big ships were built in Glasgow. So no, they were after the docks to get ships. And the men, big barracks that was there for maybe 100 years. It was a horrible, horrible time. When I was stationed up north, they didn't have that concern. Because you were too far away in the Highlands, they wouldn't be wanting to shoot us. Not if they could help it.
Oh, did they have like evacuations?
Oh
in the
yes.
city?
The Sunday, my sister and I were at church, and the war was declared the Sunday, the 3rd, September the 3rd, 11 a.m. And the minister told us that we would not have war. By the time we walked home, we passed a school, and there was little children, with the big boys with little caps and elbow shorts, and probably in Hong Kong elbow shorts too, shorts. And they lined up, we had the gas mask. It was like a cardboard box, more or less, and your gas mask was inside. They had a little suitcase, and all their worldly goods in it, and they were being sent to the country. Some were sent to Canada, and my cousin was sent to Canada. They were sent all over the place to keep them safely, because they were getting killed all over. It was terrible. But that was scary. I can never forget that sight as long as I live, these little children lined up. Mind you, I was only 14 myself. I thought I was growing up. I thought I was a big girl. These little kids, they never saw their parents for years. You know, just years. But some it was for their good. Others I don't know, but at least they were alive at the end of the war.
So back to the war. So how did joining the military change your view of war? And how did it change like the view that you had of your country or like of international events? Like,
It changed the fact that I felt I was doing something worthwhile. I worked very, very hard.
Oh yeah.
Because you knew it was for a cause.
Mm-hmm.
When you were, all the men were away, and so you had to do whatever was necessary. But it was always for the cause of the country. You did not want the Germans to take over it. What saddened me when I've been to Germany, it saddened me because they are as close to Scottish people as you can get. We, in the old Scottish language, say good night, that's good night. And in German it's good nacht. It's a guttural language, it's a very similar language. And they're actually very clean and kind, good people. And I wondered why we'd be fighting. You know, what do you gain really? It was Hitler. Hitler was the fascist, and he had all the young people riled up. In fact, my best friend in Canada was running one of the camps, his camps. You know, it's so sad. I don't see the need for war. War of words, and the pen is mightier than the sword. We should have war of words. We should never have to go to war and kill each other. It's not right. I don't believe in it. Do you?
No.
I can't see it. I can't, especially can't see women. Some American women right now have got children, and they're going over and fighting overseas.
Yeah.
Fighting. It's wrong. It's so sad. It's inhumane, actually. It's against my better judgment.
While you were working in your military unit, did you feel like you were contributing a lot to the country
Yes.
as a force?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You work very hard, yes. Harder than you normally would work. I mean, you're not working for a pay. There's the feeling of the difference is not working to get because you're getting paid for it. You're working because it's helping to end the war, you hope.
Was it helping to end the war or feeling like a pride for your country?
No, well, everything's mixed up in there.
So when you were serving in the military, were you in Scotland the whole time?
Yes. Yes.
And so, as a woman, do you feel like your position in the how was your position in the military viewed as compared to the men? Do you feel like you were treated any differently, or do you feel like?
Yes, we are simply because, for example, it took them a long time for the veterans to accept us. We were not soldiers. We were not holding rifles and guns. It took them a long time for eventually to accept us, and then they accepted the firefighters. Now, I've fought forest fires in the north. It's a terrible thing, but they took a while to accept us,
Do you feel
really.
like you achieved the acceptance by the end of the
Oh yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes, definitely, positively, yes.
And so, between your unit, do you feel like there was a sense of like camaraderie, or like do you feel
Oh
like there
yes,
was a sense
oh
of
yes.
family belonging?
Well, you know, for example, it'd either be pouring rain or snowing, and we had kind of a big khaki lab coats that we'd put on them occasionally like that. That's how we had protection. And we'd build a great big fire, and we'd sing, "World's on fire, the flames go higher, but I can weather the storm. What do I care, the icicles form?" So you would just go there and try and dry out. That we had wee tubby woman, and we used to we'd put her in the middle, we'd sing her. She was quite plump, and we'd have her turn around. Yes, there was a lot of camaraderie. We did it. I met my husband actually, the one I married, not the first boyfriend. He was stationed about 7 miles north of me, and they had been in North Africa, Sicily, Italy, and they'd been fighting for over 3 years. And they came to Scotland in the mountains to learn to ski. And the plan was originally to go into Norway to attack Europe. So they were going to go into Norway on skis. He was a light artillery. So they would strap the guns to their back and go in with skis. And that was the purpose for them being there. So we had lots of good dances, and people were kind. Some people were invited to the home for dinner now and then.
For you, was there ever a moment that was particularly scary for you? Like, what was the scariest
Oh, many
moment in the
times.
war?
Yes, my sister and my friend and I, this is during the war prior to joining up, we did a lot of hiking in the country. And this plane came down, we thought it was going to stop us, because that's where we get their guns and they would kill you. They come right down and I said, jump in the ditch, quick, quick, in the ditch, quick, quick. So we all jumped in the ditch, and it must have been the RAF, our own Air Force guys. I'm sure they were laughing their heads off because they came back and did it again. And that was one scary point. And as I say, I've had really scary times, like when I first learned to do the sawmill, the girl ahead of me got her finger taken off. That was the first day. I've not got a few wins with axes and that saw particularly. Let me think of any of. Oh, of course, when the trees, when they roll off, there's a certain way you have to cut a tree, and we had to cut it to the ground. So we have to face it. You get your axe and you make a V on the bottom of the tree. But then if you don't point it in the right direction, it's going to spin. And that particular day, I had no hold in my left foot. That thing spun him right on my left foot, and I just went. Luckily, it went out. But a few scary moments, yes. And putting out big forest fires was another scary moment, yes. The forest fire was very close to the aerodrome, the Air Force base, and they had to get it out quick before. The day the war was finished, this was one of the most scariest things in my life. I was trying to, there was a village not too far away, and you could hear the bells, and we knew the war was over. Now I'm bringing this big horse. Now, if you've ever seen a Clydesdale horse, it's the biggest horse you can find, workhorse. I'm riding it down to the farm where we had to keep it in the whatever. And the army came by on the horse, and this horse bolted, and I went straight for the trees, and I was absolutely sick. It's a very huge horse. I had to climb what we called a dike, a wooden place, to get up onto this horse. But it went full tilt. I got right across the nose, and we had a big dance that Saturday, and I couldn't go dressed up.
Do you have any very fond memories of serving in the war?
Oh yes, I met some good friends, and I met my husband, of course.
Did you keep in touch with any of the other women in your unit after the war ended?
I did. In fact, my best friend, her mother became my mother, and when I went on leave, because we had no home, I would go to her home, and my children were she was grandmother to my children, and I kept in touch with her daughter. Yes.
As a woman, what was your opinion? Was your pay smaller than comparable men's rankings?
In my case, we didn't have any men. The men were all gone, so it was all women. It was a women's corps, so there was no comparison there. You couldn't compare with anyone because there was no one there to compare with. It was a very, very poor pay. Bearing in mind you got your lodgings, your hut, and your cot bed, and your food. The money was very poor. You weren't in there for the money. It was called pocket money.
Yeah, there to serve your country, of course, right?
Do you ever want to complain about that, or do you feel frustrated?
Oh, no. I wouldn't complain.
Was it more of the feeling of being able to serve in the war?
Absolutely, positive. The joy. The joy is the wrong word. The good feeling you had that you were doing something worthwhile. It was a very good feeling. You knew you were accomplishing something. They used a lot of the wood in the mines for pit props and different things. There was no wood cut other than the women were cutting for whatever purpose was necessary. And Scotland at that time, the fisheries, the forests, and whisky were the three big exports that we had in Scotland. They were our biggest exports at that time. So it was so necessary to have them. Because a lot of people at that time probably used wood for the fire, but that wasn't our problem.
Also, the wood that you cut, you said it went to the mines. Well, it went to the mines for scaffolding, and you know where else the wood went to?
No, I don't. I don't really know. They need to prop up. We did different lengths and different widths, and it went accordingly. We didn't know where. We just put them on the choo-choo train and left it.
So, do you keep many souvenirs of the war? I see these beautiful pictures over here.
I don't have a lot, but I dug out some pictures. I'll show you where I find them. They were on that table. I just kind of pulled them together. And I think that's the one from the Queen, is it? Is that the citation from the Queen?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And over here, you'll find the Queen's mother, and I can't see, and the Princess Margaret, Princess Elizabeth, Princess Margaret, and me.
Yeah.
That's the Queen Mother.
Yes, Queen Founder.
That's Princess Elizabeth, that's
Yeah.
the Queen now, and that's
Yeah.
Princess Margaret, and that's Queen Margaret of Scotland.
What kind of medals these are?
Yeah, I've got the Queen's Gold Medal and just a regular War Service Medal.
These are all really nice photos.
I'm going to try and find then pictures. Oh, here we are. This is my best friend. I was telling you her mother became my mother. She actually got hurt very badly and had to leave. And who else have we got here? Oh, that's my friend here, and that's her husband, Luke. I just gave you the uniform, and that's the idea, showing that you're showing the uniform. We wore breeches, khaki jackets. This is, I don't know if that's the same. Yeah, probably the same, could be.
Very fashionable. These are very fashionable.
They were breeches. Oh, this is where my husband was stationed. He was stationed 7 miles up the road from me, and it was called Braemar. And this is, it looked like a little cat. Is that, what does it say there? Is that Balmoral Castle? Maybe that's Balmoral Castle. Can you tell it? It tells you on the back.
Yeah, Balmoral Castle.
That's Balmoral. That's where opposite me, across the river where I was stationed, and that's where the King and the Queen came.
That's where the King and Queen stay when they have like a 6-week vacation in Scotland.
Next question. During the war, could you describe what a typical day was like? So your daily routine, what you do in the mornings, the
We would
evenings?
get up probably around 6 a.m. and you get washed and brush your teeth and go down to the hut where you had your dining. And then after you ate your breakfast, you would make up your own sandwiches for the day. You were allowed 2 sandwiches, spread very thin with whatever, and maybe a slice of cheese and one slice of meat, if anywhere, whatever in the other, and that had to last you all day.
And after the war, do you feel like it was easy for you to transition from life every day, waking up at 6 a.m. back to your regular everyday life?
It was very hard. I got married right away, and we had the baby a year after, and it was very hard to get work. It was very, very tight living, and you had nowhere to go. And when they saw you with a baby, they didn't want you.
Do you ever think you were in direct danger during the war at any point?
Yes, at times I wasn't in direct danger, but not from fire, if it was during the war, yes, for the first 3.5 years of the war, I was in direct danger, yes, from the aircraft, from bombings. Also, I helped, we would have air raid wardens, and it was fire watching, we would call it. And we more or less, you and you. So you would take turns, maybe be in a street with a big factory or whatever, and you'd have to stay there all night long and watch for a fire and then report that fire so that somebody could help. So there was air raid wardens, but then the fire watchers, they were called. They weren't in uniform, because I was just a teeny opera. That was another job we did. Yeah.
Before the war started, did you have any feelings towards Germany or
No.
no?
First of all, no, never. I actually loved it. I used to the costumes of the countries, and no, I love people. There's nobody any different from anybody else. But when the war started, prior to the war starting, you could tell because the Hitler Youth and High Hitler, I mean, that man was a fanatic. He was just an absolute fanatic. But all the young people listened to him. He wanted a pure race. Everybody had to be blonde and blue-eyed and white. His whole ambition in life was a pure race. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, but the youth were youth everywhere. They would march with them and Heil Hitler or Heil Hitler, everybody was Heil Hitler.
And so, As the war progressed or as the war ended, do you feel like your perspective on Germans changed, especially after learning the tragedies of, for example, the Holocaust or the
No,
different war
really,
crimes
we never
committed?
heard of that.
Sorry?
We never heard of the Holocaust till long after the war.
Until
We
long
didn't
after.
hear, don't forget, we didn't have TV in these days. You had a radio. You didn't have the same method of
No
telling.
internet, no TV back then. So that's the reason why.
Sorry?
No internet, no TV. So that's
Absolutely. No love, no nothing.
yeah.
We had the radio, which was Daddy's radio, and we get some dance music on it now and then.
Yeah.
Oh, so were you not aware of like international affairs during the war?
Well, yes, I kept a diary. Since I was 14, I kept a diary in the war. And my brother got a hold of it and was laughing with his friends, and I took it and tore it out. I'm so angry at myself now because I was so concerned about the war. I was really concerned about poor people in Poland and all these poor souls. They were just marching and taking over. We didn't know about the camps because at that point, I've actually been to a German camp, and it's scary because the huts are just the way they were, and the places where they put all the bodies, they never really buried them. I mean, it's just, it's so scary. It's a horrible feeling. People would kill them, and they would tell the people to go in for a shower, and they would turn the gas on them and kill them by hundreds. It's so sad just because they were Jewish. Come on. If they aren't any joke. Inhumane.
When did you learn about the happenings of the Holocaust?
Well, gradually you would learn about that after, but not for a long time. From a station up north, you don't hear anything. During the war, forget about the radio. You didn't really know what was going on around elsewhere.
Before the war started, like, did you ever hear on like broadcasts or people around you, like right after where the war started, like their opinions on everything, like on the whole situation?
Well, we were all praying the war wouldn't come. We were trying so hard not to have war. Chamberlain, we were trying hard, we were praying hard.
Prime
The war
Minister
wouldn't
at
come.
one time.
Sorry?
Yeah, the Chamberlain.
Chamberlain. We were praying so hard that it wouldn't come to war. They decided at 11 o'clock that Sunday morning, the 3rd of September 1939, there would be a war. But everybody was praying there wouldn't, because it wasn't long since the First World War was 1418, and now we're only in 1939, 20 years later. Nobody wanted war. We didn't want war. We were very peaceful people. But Germany was going to take the whole world over and make everybody white and blonde and gorgeous blue eyes. He was a fanatic. He was an absolute fanatic. He was a house painter. He wasn't a clever man, but he managed to capture these people. These young people were drilled like you wouldn't believe.
What were your opinion on the nuclear bombs being dropped?
It was horrible. I mean, the war ended with it, but I thought that was the most horrific thing ever. Absolute beyond a joke. It was the most horrific thing to do to anybody. There was one way to stop it, because the Japanese were not going to give in. And I've met the Japanese girls' football team when they were over here for the Olympics or something. We had them at the church. And they were lovely young girls. And again, I can't say afraid of them. We had the Japs, that we called them then during the war, because they were killing our guys right, left and centre. My boyfriend in the Navy, he was all the East. And it was terrible. Just to get a new ship, a new ship, a new ship. That meant the ship was, every time the name was changed, that meant the ship was sunk that he was on.
There was a lot of backlash at the time about the use of nuclear bombs, because on one hand, many people argue that it did end the war, but on the other hand, like the sheer loss of civilian life and,
Oh, it was horrific.
and the nuclear fallout that you can
The
still
fallout,
see today.
yes.
Is
It
very
was the
horrible.
most horrific way to end the war, but it did the job. But there wasn't a kind way to do it. But we would have been still fighting, I'm sure. They were as stubborn as we were. I mean, what they did to the Hong Kong people was absolutely beyond a joke. It was cyclists.
So that's pretty much it for our interview. Thank you
Well,
so
thank you.
much
It's
for
my
taking the
pleasure.
chance to be
It's
interviewed.
been a joy.
That was really
And I
grateful.
never boast. I never boast about the war. I don't think something should boast about.